From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains. Brought to you by the Historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. Now today, I am standing in front of what is not a Bayview Lake Captain's house. Some places have reported him as a lake captain. I studied it pretty solid and I couldn't confirm that. But what I did confirm is that he was a substantial businessman and lumberyard owner, possibly, maybe in his case, for fun, Bayview's lumber baron. Now, there were 3 lumberyard owners in Bayview. Of those 3, 2 were or had been lake captains, and then 1 had started out in the maritime support business, to put it succinctly as I can. and then subsequently branched out into lumber, which at the time, a lot of ships captained by Bayview Lake captains were bringing back lumber from northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan over here to Milwaukee and Bayview, and of course other places. Now this captain's name is Winand Schlosser. He was born in Wisconsin, and what distinguishes Winand Schlosser from the others is that Winand Schlosser was, through his lumber business, Bayview's most prolific ship owner. Now we have a Bayview most prolific ship captain, which you have either seen by now or will see soon an episode about. And we have Bayview's most prolific schooner captain, John Broch, which was an episode a couple months back. Schooners pulled out because they were the most frequent on the lakes at the time. And John Broch lived over on East Lincoln Avenue in my house. Ooh. But Winand Schlosser was the most prolific ship owner. He owned, wait for it, not one, not two, not three, not four, but 19 different ships while he lived in this house. Now those of you familiar with Winand Schlosser generally, that hasn't been reported before, but generally this house was down a ways on Bayview Park, where Bayview Park is now, and the land was eroding and the city wanted this land for a park anyway, so what they did is they forced him to move, and he moved here, which is like right on the edge of St. Francis. This is literally the last Bayview home before you go to St. Francis. Winand Schlosser may also have had a part in getting the breakwater extended all the way down here past Bayview, well into St. Francis. And I'll show you a slide of that here later, or now if I can work it in, because his house was there and the land was eroding, and so he was documented going to city council meetings asking for the breakwater to be extended, and lo and behold it was. And he probably had a big role in that. I'm not sure about that, but he was pretty involved. So, Winand Schlosser, Bayview's most prolific ship owner, 19 ships. Most were schooners, but not all. There's some steamships in there. Here's a steam barge. So pretty cool. I will now turn it over to our narrator Simon Stanhope from England, who will tell you more about him. And so for now, hats off to our Bayview Lake captains. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will not be discussing a Bayview lake captain, but rather the life of Winand Schlosser, Bayview's most prolific ship owner, and also one of Bayview's 3 lumberyard owners. Of these 3, Winand Schlosser's lumber business was the largest. Some might even refer to him as Bayview's lumber baron. After all, during his career he owned a total of 19 ships to support his yard, far exceeding the other 2 lumberyard owners half as many. Ships were required to bring the felled timber down to Milwaukee from the forests of northern Wisconsin and Michigan. While Schlosser lived in Bayview, His lumberyard was in Milwaukee. Only one of Bayview's 3 lumberyard owners had their yard in Bayview. Before going into the lumber business, Winand Schlosser learned about the shipping trade and business in general by working for the Saveland Company for 15 years. The Savelands were among Milwaukee's most famous maritime families. Schlosser spent over 30 years in the lumber business and was highly successful. Born on 30th of August, 1859, in Milwaukee, Winand Schlosser began working at his older brother John's grocery store on Florida Street in the 3rd Ward in 1874 that provided provisions to the nearby ships. There was an extensive feature news article many years later profiling John and his lake captain customers, providing amazing details on how ships of the day were supplied. Winand continued working for his brother at the grocery store through 1879. Winand then disappeared for a few years until 1883 to 85, when he was working as a clerk for an unnamed company. But in 1886, Winand Schlosser got his big break when he was hired by John Saveland and Company, commercial merchants. They not only supplied ships with food and maritime gear, but also had a separate retail component that sold fish, lumber, and coffee. The Saveland family had a substantial maritime history in Milwaukee, from captaining ships, like Bayview's lake captain Jacob Saveland, see his episode earlier on this channel, to owning ships, to running logistic supply businesses that supported them, like John Saveland and Company. Winand Schlosser, who ultimately worked for John Saveland for the next 12 years, through 1896, and rose to become the company's secretary and treasurer, would have learned a great deal about the shipping business while working for and with the Savelands. During this time, he lived in and around the 3rd Ward. Then, in 1897, he decided to take the plunge and left working for John Saveland to begin his own lumber company in Milwaukee. Undoubtedly, his work with Saveland gave him the clue there was an opportunity for him to branch out into the lumber business. At the same time, Schlosser bought a schooner, the Kewaunee, that he would use to transport the felled timber down from northern Wisconsin and Michigan to his new lumber yard. It was a large capital outlay, starting the new company, plus buying a lake schooner, on the hope of a return of his investment. But history would prove it was most certainly a great decision that resulted in equally great success for himself and his family. Then, in 1899, Winand Schlosser sold the Kewaunee and bought another schooner, this time the Levi Grant, which he would retain until 1906. This began an extensive process of buying and selling ships, almost like horse trading, that saw him own more ships than anyone else in Bayview maritime history. Schlosser has sometimes been referred to as a lake captain, but the research conducted in the course of developing both this channel and its supporting books could not confirm that. However, he is confirmed as Bayview's most prolific ship owner, owning 19 total ships, most of them being schooners. That's almost double the combined number of ships owned by the 2 other Bayview lumberyard owners, Charles Ellis, 8, and Thomas Kearns, 2. It's especially interesting to learn that when the total number of ships owned by all 3 of these Bayview men, Schlosser, Ellis, and Kearns, is added up, the total comes to 27 ships. Needless to say, all that pristine, old-growth timber was big business in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and not just in Milwaukee, but throughout all of the Great Lakes region, and even across America. In 1902, Winand Schlosser moved to 1180 Superior Street in Bayview, and would remain there for the next 24 years, until 1926. He and wife of 17 years, Teresa, moved into this house with their 5 children, Mary, 15, Annie, 14, Rosa, 12, Frank, 9, and Joseph, 1. They also had at least 1, and possibly 2 other children that died, reflective of the horrible infant mortality rate at the time. Between 1902 and 1926, all while living at 1180 Superior Street, located on the site of today's current Bayview Park, Winand Schlosser owned the following fleet of ships, hiring captains and crews to sail them for him and supply his lumber business. 1902 to 06, the schooner Levi Grant. 1902 to 10, the schooner Minerva. 1906 to 11, the schooner C.H. Hackley. 1907 to 20, the schooner Stafford. 1908 to 10, the schooner Cape Horn. 1909 to 10, the steam barge Albert Soper. 1909 to 10, the barkentine Favourite. 1910 to 1916, the steam barge Emma Rhoda, a.k.a. Cream City. 1911 to 16, the schooner W.D. Hossack. 1915, the schooner Harold. 1915, the schooner City of Sheboygan. 1915, the schooner Alice. 1915, the schooner Simpson. 1916, the schooner G.J. Boyce. 1916 to 18, the steamer W.L. Kennedy, a.k.a. United Empire. Of interest, this ship was illustrated on the back of the Canadian $4 bill. (1920 to 21), the schooner Kewaunee, previously also owned by him in 1896 to 99, before coming to Bayview. 1916 to 26, the City of Grand Haven, and 1922 to 26, the schooner Our Sun. In 1926, the local government ordered Winand Schlosser and others like Bayview Lake Captain Herman Crones to remove their homes from the strip of land on the bluff overlooking Lake Michigan that is today known as Bayview Park. Schlosser chose to move his home to the very south end and across the street from this new park at 3169 South Superior Street, where it remains standing to this day. He is last listed living there in 1934. It may not have been entirely the government forcing the move. Schlosser testified at Milwaukee City Hall in 1923 that erosion of the cliff on which his house stood was caused by the breakwater not extending far enough south past Oklahoma Avenue. Further news articles indicate it is very likely that the long breakwater extension that is seen today just offshore, that goes all the way south to St. Francis, was and is due largely to the extensive advocacy for the extension by and of Winand Schlosser. While living in his same home, but now at its new location after the forced move at 3169 South Superior Street, Winand Schlosser owned the following ships he used to bring down lumber from the north for his Milwaukee lumber yard. 1926 to 27, the schooner City of Grand Haven. 1926 to 30, the schooner Our Sun. 1929 to 33, the steam barge Edwin S. Tice, a.k.a. Muller. In 1940, Schlosser, now twice widowed and age 80, retired to 2802 Herman Street in Bayview. He died there on 23 January 1944, age 84. He was documented to have been a member of the Old Settlers Club, the Board of Managers of the Lumber Carriers Association of the Great Lakes, the Milwaukee Harbor Commission, and Secretary of the Holy Trinity Branch of the Catholic Knights of Wisconsin. He is buried with wife Teresa at Holy Trinity Cemetery. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. we thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Winand Schlosser, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now, by individual volumes in both e-book and paperback, on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's Lake Captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's Lake Captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button, as well as in the end credits at the conclusion of this video. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview Lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 Lake Captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with the instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. It's free, fun, and available any time you're out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.